When I look up into the sky, what do I hope to see? Well, whatever it is, I don't think it's animals raining down on me. Join me while I look at some times that it literally rained animals. Bats. Now, regardless of what you want to call them, bats are a key part of the world's ecosystem as well as its mythology. However, it just kind of makes you wonder what happened if you saw them raining down from the sky. What would you do? Well, that's exactly what happened in Australia. In fact, it happened this year. Apparently in South Wales, a heat wave would come across the land, and it sent temperatures soaring up to 104 degrees. Now, that's bad enough for all of us humans, but for bats, well, it's actually fatal. The bats were literally being boiled alive, and because of that, they began to fall from the sky. Now, yeah, it's technically not raining down bats, but if there's a pack of bats that are flying together in the sky, then they all die or fry and then fall down on all of us. The sad part about it all is that even though the locals did do their best to try and save the bats, over 1,000 of them ended up dead because of the heat. Hopefully this will be used to try and help animals like bats, should such heat waves return. Iguanas. Sticking with 2018 and a loose interpretation of raining down, we're now going to go all the way down to the state of Florida. But in a twist, we're not going to take the heat again. Rather, we're going to talk about the cold. Yeah, it actually can get cold in Florida, and in January of this year, the temperatures plummeted. How bad, you may ask? Well, how about below 40 degrees? Yeah, it got that cold in Florida, and while the human population did their best to stay warm in this insane drop, some of the animal population wasn't so fortunate, including iguanas. You see, iguanas are a type of creature that are extremely affected by the temperatures, and if the temperature goes below 50 degrees Fahrenheit, their bodies can begin to slow down. And when temperatures drop below 40, they straight up freeze. Because of that, wind and gravity pushed them out of their high perches, and it literally rained them down onto the ground. Perch. For 2 days. Alright, I'm going to be completely clear on this one. This is without a doubt a case of raining down animals. But why would I say that? Well, it's because the event occurred for over 2 days. Alright, it wasn't 2 days straight, but it did happen a lot during those 2 days. In Australia, a small town of just 650 people were met with quite the shock when it began to rain down small fish known as perch. But there were also several other factors that made this a rather strange event. First off, the fish were sometimes alive when they rained down. And secondly, they were quite a ways from a significant body of water. As for the cause, that's where things get even more mysterious. Scientists claim that a tornado was the cause, and that it somehow picked up the perch and launched them all the way into the town. However, we have a slight problem with that, because, as I've mentioned multiple times, the perch came flying in for 2 days. If a single tornado were to do that, how could it be happening over a long span of time? I don't really know, but it's certainly very curious, and if you have an opinion, be sure to leave it in the comments. Tiny frogs. Now, let's think about this one for a second. If it did happen to rain down animals on you, what would be the best case scenario? You'd probably want something kind of harmless or arguably cute, and something that wouldn't terrify you once you saw what it was, right? Well, then you may want it to rain down tiny frogs like it did in Hungary back in 2010. These frogs aren't really all that big, they're only a few millimeters long, so just imagine getting hit in the face by them and then realizing that they're live frogs. You'd no doubt be surprised. Unlike some of the other animals on my list, there are many reasons and many possibilities for these things to rain down from above and from afar. Intense winds can literally pick them up and fling them around with no effort. Then, of course, you have things like tornadoes and waterspouts, which can also shoot them up into the atmosphere until they then come raining back down, not unlike the fish in Australia. Still though, as noted before, if something did actually happen to rain down on you, you could do a lot worse than tiny frogs. For example, spiders. This is nightmare fuel for sure, and no doubt a nightmare of many people. Now, bugs and arachnids are everywhere, and they are without a doubt integral to the survival of the planet. But that doesn't mean that we want them raining down in biblical plague proportions from the sky. I mean, seriously, would you really want that? Unfortunately, for several countries, spider rain is a real thing, and it's happened, and it can happen frequently depending on weather patterns. In Brazil, one of the worst cases would be recorded in 2013. That's because spiders of various species and sizes began to rain down there, and the moment that they touched down, they started spinning webs and making homes. The result of this was Brazil being covered in webs that nobody wanted to be caught in. More than likely, you've seen pictures of spiders making their massive webs over man-made areas, and this is exactly what occurred. But not just in Brazil. There's also been documented cases of this in Australia, the United States, and other places. And not unlike frogs that I mentioned before, wind is actually the reason that this happens. They send the spiders up, and then the spiders have to come down. Oh, the immense horror. Birds. Now moving from the explained to the unexplained, there have been multiple causes of perfectly healthy birds just simply dropping from the sky dead. A more famous case of this would happen in Beebe, Arkansas. This town is famous because it didn't just happen once, it happened several times over the years. Blackbirds have been shown to be flying through the air and then suddenly plummet to the ground like kamikaze fighters. People have even had to dodge them as they fell en masse towards them. Now, the obvious question would be, what would cause this to happen? Well, that's where things tend to get a little bit murky. One explanation is that fireworks would cause them to fall, the reasoning being that explosions can cause birds to panic and then fly into objects and other birds, which then results in their plummeting to the earth. Others, though, feel that weird turbulence in the skies above the town causes it. There are problems with both of the theories, but either way you look at it, it did happen, and when tied to certain other events that go on in Arkansas, it brought out a lot of doomsday conspiracy theorists. Now, it hasn't happened in Beebe since the last event, but it could be just a matter of time. Tadpoles. In 1997, in the country of Japan, a very curious event started to take place. That's because it began to rain tadpoles. Now, I mean literally, but it's the scale of the event that needs to be brought to your attention. For this rainfall was being recorded by people all over the country. I'm talking from the very tip in the north to the very bottom part in Hiroshima. That's a large area to be covered in tadpoles. The simple fact is, it's a mystery that's not been solved. And what's more is this event actually took place more than once, with the last one in 2009, however, not to the scale of the 1997 event. So what happened? Do you know? Exotic sea creatures. There are cases that are very, very far from logical, such as very large and very exotic sea creatures raining down on people. For example, how about a frozen squid? No, I'm serious. In the Falkland Islands, a man was fishing when all of a sudden he was knocked unconscious. 2 days later, he woke up to find out that he had been knocked out by a literal frozen squid. Now, when I say frozen, I don't mean like creatures themselves were frozen, but the squid was in a block of ice. So how exactly did that get into the air? Why did it fall down like it did? And what are the odds of being hit in the face by a block of ice with a squid in the center of it? But wait, there's more. In England in 1894, a storm occurred over Bath, England. The storm was so bad that it actually rained down jellyfish. Thousands of them, in fact, raining down all over the city. Now, to be fair, the jellyfish weren't exactly that big, but when there are thousands of them raining down, that's absolutely a problem. Baby alligators. Now, did you know that there was a time when baby alligators were considered to be a good pet? Yeah, and then parents would simply flush them down the toilet, starting the alligators in the sewers myth. Well, this is a nice twist on that tale, because apparently in 1877, it actually began to rain baby alligators. The ironic thing is, this happened in South Carolina, a place that's definitely not known for its alligator population. However, according to one farmer, the critters began to rain from the sky, and what's more, they were also alive. So they naturally began scurrying around trying to find things and places to go. It is a very curious thing, and there hasn't been an explanation as to why it occurred in the region in this way. One thing that we should all be grateful for, though, is that these were only baby alligators. I mean, could you imagine if they were full or even mid-sized? That would be one special event that no one would ever want to remember. The striped surgeonfish. Now, don't be fooled by the name of this fish, because it's certainly not here to help you. The striped surgeonfish, also known as doctorfish, and clown surgeons are incredibly dangerous and pack a nasty punch that your doctor may not even be able to fix for you, even with the best anti-venom that money can buy. These fish are also known to be territorial, choosing one particular location